Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session today on Archangel Michael. Okay, so let's start with our session. Today, we're going to be talking about Archangel Michael, who is the angel for protection. So those of us who have been doing the meditation with GMCKS Energy Transformers over the last couple of Saturdays, you're aware of what Acharya Nona has to say about the Archangel Michael. She says he's the archangel who looks like God. Okay, so this is just a picture of a pretty church that I found. So moving on to Archangel Michael. Now, in the New Testament, it says that Archangel Michael, leads God's armies against Satan's forces in the book of Revelation during the war in heaven, where he defeats Satan. So, of course, there are a lot of stories, and one of the purposes in our sessions here is to help us to understand these stories at a level where we can understand what is it that we can do and how we can bring it into our life, right? So, my question was, the thought that came to my mind when I read this is, okay, so where is heaven? So, if we are in the school of Pranic healing and Arhatic yoga, we know that Master CHOA Kok Sui has had announced a plan, which is called the Divine Plan, which is not his plan alone. It's just that we are all part of the Divine Plan. And the plan is to make heaven on earth. And one of the ways of making heaven on earth is to ensure that people's bodies and people's minds are taken care of through the process of course, pranic healing and Arhatic yoga. So where is heaven? Heaven is going to be on earth. And the target is to have heaven on earth in 150 years, which basically means that we have to make sure that there is one pranic healer per family who is then healing their own family and also practicing Arhatic yoga, which is the path to spiritual leadership. Okay, so just backing up a little bit, how do we make heaven on earth? Okay, so one of the ways of making heaven on earth is to practice what we call character building. It is a series of 5 virtues which are discussed in the basic pranic healing workshop as well as all the way to Arhatic yoga. So the first virtue is called loving kindness. The second one is generosity. The third one is honesty and non-lying. The fourth one is constancy of aim and effort. And the fifth one is moderation among all the other 4. Okay, so that's basically what we call character building. And basically, it follows what's also called the golden rule of yin and yang, of do's and don'ts. So what that allows us to do is to be aware of what do we need to do first. And one of the things that we have learned is that the first thing we need to do is to practice loving kindness. Now, as easy as that may sound, it's not always easy because we're not always kind to ourselves, and sometimes we're not kind to others also. And I'm also a work in progress when it comes to this. Okay, so moving on to Archangel Michael. Archangel Michael, over time, his role became that of the protector of the army of God and against the forces of evil. So again, my question is, where is this army of God? Is it going to come from somewhere? Is it here? Is it there? Where is it? So there are many levels of understanding of this, of course. So one of the levels of understanding that I would like to talk about, which we also talk about in our Bhagavad Gita series, is that our chakras, the ones in our body, they are the army. And in order to make them the army of God, we have to infuse all of them with the values that we are taught in character building. So, for example, our heart chakra needs to be full of love, and it needs to be full of, let's say, what's called ahimsa. Is ahimsa that easy to practice? Yes and no. Sometimes when we are being critical of somebody, then also we are practicing, not loving kindness. Sometimes we think that just because we are being honest with people and that honesty is the best policy, then we are doing the right thing. Perhaps not. Again, in our school, which, again, is not the only school, there are many schools. But in our school, we definitely like to practice loving kindness. It's not always easy, I agree. But the point is that as long as I am more loving today than I was yesterday and the day before, I'm making progress. And eventually, the army of God against the forces of evil. Now, what are evils? Evils are basically the virtues, the vices, for example. So let's say if loving kindness is a virtue, then unkindness is the vice, is the evil that it's trying to conquer. Let's say if generosity is the virtue, then non-stealing is is the opposite end. So stealing is the vice. So what that allows us to do is to be aware that the kingdom of God is here. The kingdom of God, to convert earth into heaven, is something that we are trying to do. The process of converting heaven to earth is to practice character building, which is taught, I think, in most religious schools and most spiritual schools. Ours is not the only one. We just have a system of doing it, which I find very useful because, I always thought that sometimes I felt it was difficult to understand when to be honest and when to be kind. When do I practice? What should I say, constancy of aim and effort, which means just pushing ahead and pushing ahead, even if, let's say, my team is not ready, or my employees are not ready, or my boss is not ready, whatever is the case, right? So we have to find a moderation, we have to find a balance among all of this. And to do all of this, we need a system, we need a framework, and this framework is taught again in basic pranic healing to some extent, but later on in Arhatic yoga. And it's really been helpful, at least for me. So I hope that you will also understand where Master Cho is coming from and why. Okay. Now the idea that so again, there was this there was these stories that I read that in the Jewish faith they did not recognize Archangel Michael as, or any intermediary between God and ourselves. Okay, which is fine if that's how, that's how they function. But what it brought me to is, an interesting observation is like, so why do we need intermediaries? This is nothing against the Jewish faith, it's just I'm using this information from Wikipedia, and it says here that the Archangel Michael was considered to be an advocate of the Jews. And so despite the rabbinical prohibition against appealing to angels as intermediaries between God and his people, Archangel Michael began to occupy a certain place in the Jewish liturgy, as is written on the screen. So my question was, why do we require intermediaries in the first place? Like, why can't we just, access God? Why not? Why can't we just access God? So Master Cho explains this very beautifully in his book, The Existence of God is Self-Evident. He basically says that there are energy transformers. By the way, our center name is also GMCKS Energy Transformers. So the task is like, let's say, for example, you have we are in Kolkata, so we have a main electricity meter. There is an electricity generator in the city, and then that comes to a main area, and then it comes to like a locality, then it comes to a building, and then from the building it gets distributed to our apartments, and then from our apartments we have plug points by which we put on our lights, right? So the energy is being stepped down at every step, which basically means that a very high voltage electricity is being made smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Because if we were to just take this phone and plug it into the main CESC electrical system, what do you think is going to happen to this? It's just going to evaporate. I mean, it's just going to burst, right? So the role of energy transformers, the role of the guru, is to basically keep stepping down the energy to an extent where we can understand it, where we can use it. Okay, if we just get too much energy, then the possibility is that we would just get what is called vaporized. Okay, and it also says, if you remember the stories of Moses, then it says here on page 99 of the book Existence of God, it says the planetary logos, or the planetary God, told Moses, "You cannot see my face, for no one can see me and live." This is Exodus 33:20. Okay. So the reason I'm bringing this up is we need to be aware that there are energy transformers. Like, there are people who are great gurus and they have disciples, and their disciples are taking care of another group of disciples, and then going down, going down, going down. So that basically means that just as there is a step down transformer, there is also a step up transformer. So the reason of discussing this with everyone here is that as we become, healers, as we become powerful healers, then we can become instructors, then we can become acharyas, then we can become masters, we can become holy masters, and there on. So if you read the book called The Solar System by Arthur Powell, he talks about how the entire planetary scheme or the entire solar system is evolving. So as we evolve, as we keep stepping up our energy, what is happening is that we are becoming capable of more and more and more service. Okay, so let's say, for example, our group here is having this meditation, at 4 o'clock since I think since March 21st or something. We've just been having this meditation and mass healing going on, right? Which means that 4 o'clock, most of us have to be available here, right? So that's a schedule. And if you're the kind of person who does everything on time every time, then it's easy for you. But for a lot of us, it was not. So one thing that makes me aware is, if you look at the sun god, appears every single day for the most part. And even if we don't see the sun god, he, or whatever nomenclature you want to use, is there. So there is a step down transformer and there is a step up transformer. So yes, there are step down transformers, and our task is to become step up transformers. What that means is that as we grow, we are able to handle more energy, more voltage, and more voltage, and more voltage. And in the process of stepping up our transformation, in the process of stepping up the amount of energy that we can handle, we will at some point become God. Okay, so the idea of sharing this is that it's not going to happen overnight, definitely not. It's going to be a long process, but the idea is that we will all become God. We hear a lot about God and we think that God is somewhere out there. Yes, that's true to some extent, but there's also the aspect that we all have to eventually merge with God. And in order to merge with God, the energy has to be compatible, right? We can't just take an energy that is, let's say, not very clean, and put it up and mix it up with the really pure and clean sources. It just doesn't work. There's going to be there's going to be a problem there, right? So the task for us is to not only absorb the step down transformation that comes to us from the Supreme God, but to also begin to gradually step up our energies. Okay, so Archangel Michael is the protector. So the protector basically means that he, as you can see, carries a shield and carries a sword. So again, those of us who have done pranic psychic self-defense, we have learned how to make shields. And the purpose of making shields is to protect. So the question is, why would we need protection? We would need protection because in the world, this is something that I read with Swami Parthasarathhi's teachings, his books, where he said that there is the aggressive good and the aggressive bad. So, and then there are the passive good and there are the passive bad. Okay. Now these two forces exist. Now, depending on where we want to go, sometimes we need protection in the time being while we're trying to build something, or we're trying to build ourselves up. So Archangel Michael is the protector. So again, Archangel Michael is the one who carries a sword, who holds a shield. So again, as we were talking about, stepping down and stepping up. So as we become more and more powerful healers, we also learn how to build shields to protect our patients. So for example, why would a patient need protection? So let's say if someone's living in a home where they are subject to a lot of negative thoughts and a negative emotions coming from, let's say, family members. You don't get up on time, you don't do anything, you're wasting your time, things like that. Or oh, you're not doing enough, for example. So if we have people like that, then they're constantly bombarded with those thoughts. So what happens is that their aura, which is already a little delicate, and that tends to, what should I say, get shaken up a bit, and it makes it difficult for that person to change. So it's kind of like, if I'm trying to think of myself as being let's say, a calm person. Okay, I'm trying to be a calm person. Now what's happening is that all around me, people are like, just being angry and like yelling and screaming. That makes it very difficult for me to be a calm person, even though I'm trying, because there's so much anger coming towards me, for example. So what we can do is we can perform the role, with the help, of course, of Archangel Michael. We can help perform the role of creating a shield around this person, which will then protect this person while they are being healed. Now, healing doesn't necessarily only mean pranic healing. I just want to clarify, it can mean any kind of healing. Okay, sometimes people just need that protection. So at that point, it's a good idea to invoke to Archangel Michael. One more interesting thing that I found is, this is a a story about Lord Yama in the Hindu tradition, where it is considered that he comes from the south and that he is also the protector. And of course, right now we are in the middle of Durga Puja, so Durga Devi is also the protector. So I thought it was a nice touch to just, share this with everyone. Okay, so that's it for Archangel Michael. He is the protector and he is an intermediary between us and between God. And what we can do is we can be aware of all the intermediaries that help us, and we can also be aware of how we are going to grow and become intermediaries for others. Okay, so for those of us who are healers, I hope you're healing now. And those of us who are not, I hope you'll join us soon.
Mute.
Let us be aware of the Archangel Michael behind us. Let us be aware of his divine protective presence. If we are facing east, he will be in the south. Remember, we can reach out to Archangel Michael for protection. Let us invoke to Archangel Michael for protection for our families, for our loved ones, our homes, our workplace. May we all be divinely protected. Let's bless our financial targets with protection. Let's bless our health targets with protection. Protection from what? Protection from perhaps thoughts of others, perhaps our own doubts, all of these. Let's bless our relationships with protection from enviousness, perhaps, or from intrusions. Let's bless our spiritual target with protection so that we may move in the right direction. Let us also be aware of the law of karma. Whatever we receive is something that we have given at some point in our life, now or previously. So while we take protection from Archangel Michael, we must also be aware of the inner lesson that we need to learn. What is this situation trying to teach us? And awareness of the law of karma. Have we done this before to somebody? Knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally? Let us bless the entire planet Earth with divine protection as she makes a transition. Let's invoke to the Buddha Kuan Yin for her divine, compassionate, purifying light and soothing, healing energy to extract, externalize, and raise to higher vibrations all negativity, fears associated with the coronavirus from the Earth's energy body with her divine powers. Let's also invoke to the Lords of Karma to help us understand the lessons that this virus brings for us. Let us be aware that everything in our life that is a challenge is a lesson, something we need to learn from something. And as soon as we learn it, it goes away. Okay? When we do meditation and we bless the earth together, that is also a time when we are doing service to the earth. We are gradually, with our energy, with the positive energy that we are bringing into our body and we are blessing the earth, we are also gradually changing the energy on earth. So I remember in one of the recordings that Master Cho has, he actually says, thank you for your service for blessing the earth. So I just want to repeat that. Thank you for your service in blessing the earth and blessing everyone, and being aware of the power of prayer and invocation. So thank you for joining us, and you can invite people for our mass healing session, which is at 4 p.m. every single day on Indian Standard Time on our Zoom sessions. So you can just text us on the number below, and if you like what we do, please subscribe. Let us have your comments so we know what we can do better. Thank you.